Hello, guys. Frank Sondors. Just a bit about background about me before we will kick off. Been in tech sales for well over a decade. Started my career at Google. I'm actually a Latvian, so I'm just from here, from a small town called Ventspils, and then I worked for a bunch of SaaS companies, tech companies, and then in my last job, I led a sales team of about 50, so I scaled companies in a multitude of different ways. And then I decided a couple of years ago to start Salesforge. Salesforge allows essentially startups and companies to scale very efficiently, and currently we do that via cold email. Now, this is not about Salesforge or anything. This is about getting your head right because if you want to be really successful, whether you're a startup founder or just you want to scale business, arguably there are really only three ways to scale very fast. One of the ways to scale is through cold email, which is why we're going to discuss that. Second way is to scale via what's called cold calling at scale. You can do that using what's called a parallel dialer. And then the third way, which is the most expensive way, is scaling through advertising, so Google Ads. So we're going to focus on cold email in this particular session because cold email arguably is the most cost-efficient way to acquire clients. But there's a multitude of problems, and a lot of people believe cold email is dead. People don't like cold emails because cold email is difficult to make it work. So that's why we're going to discuss this, how to make it work. So first of all, in cold email, there's three main things that you need to be thinking about. First of all is leads. Where do you get the leads? Right, so it's very important that you're going after your ideal customer profile, right? You know exactly who you want to be going after, but it's not just one maybe ICP, ideal customer profile, that you want to go after, but you want to be testing multiple ones. So let's say you have some assumptions, some hypotheses, that these are my ideal customers, so you select one segment, second, third, fourth segments, and you're testing them, right? So you do need to scale up a bit of your activity to understand where's the traction coming from which of the segments. And it's very important that you pick the right leads, because irrespective of what sort of messaging you're going to send and what language, or what is it that you're selling, but if you're approaching the wrong people, nothing's going to happen. That's why, for example, one of the reasons why you may say cold email is dead. Second one is you need to scale and stay out of spam. The reason why you need to scale just generally cold email, you cannot be sending 10 emails and then expecting to have a lot of replies, because that's not how things work. You need to actually scale, because at any given time, there's only about 2 to 3% of your potential customers that are in the market for your product or service. And because of that general statistic, you don't know who these 2-3% are. So you need to then engage with a significantly bigger market to understand who are those 2-3%. And generally, when you are doing your outreach, one of the biggest problems in outbound sales is timing. When's the best time to be reaching out? When are they potentially in the market? When are they looking for a solution like yours? And you were just messaging at the right time, the right place. Somebody literally mentioned to me in the meeting room there that it was just the right time when I reached out to them, just the conference. It was not because they were I sold it to them. No, because it was a really good time. They were looking at something like this, and I just happened to reach out via the conference app in this particular case. So it's a similar concept, right? So that's why you need to scale. This is why you can't be just sending 10 emails. You need to send 100, maybe 1,000 emails. It really depends. So in the US, where sales process is a bit more of a science than an art, there they typically calculate how many contacts they need to process, how many emails they need to send in order to book one meeting or in order to make one sale. So you need to do it sort of a bit more systematically, a bit more do a bit more of a backwards analysis and understand the math behind to kind of make it work. And then you realize that actually, in order to book 10 meetings a month, you actually need to send, let's say, 5,000 emails. And that's what the math says, right? So if that's the case, then you need to figure out how to scale your sort of infrastructure. So we're going to talk a lot about that. Now, the final thing is the copy. So you can figure out, okay, I need to scale a lot, I need to contact the right people, but one of the biggest reasons why you fail is because of your copy. I get a lot of cold emails, and I can see it. So even though it landed in my primary inbox, I look at that, I open it, but the copy is poor. The product is great, but the copy is poor. Because guess what? Most people in the world are really bad copywriters. Most of you are really bad copywriters. And that's just normal. And then you get these bad emails in your inbox. You also probably get a lot of them. And then, of course, it doesn't resonate with you. It did not touch you, maybe your title, what you do, where you work, etc. So copy is like a huge part of being successful in cold email, and can make or break your cold email campaigns. Now, typically these days, a lot of people, when you're a sales or startup founder, you're like, I'm going to send a bunch of emails and I'm going to contact a lot of people, etc. And then what ends up happening is that when you actually send more than 50 emails a day, you start having what's called spam issues. So if you start having spam issues, that's it. The cold email dies very fast. So that's why typically per mailbox, this is why there's a bit of a stat here, 50 emails per inbox per day. This is all you can send if you want to make sure you don't have these deliverability issues. So what do you do when you need to scale? Well, you need to build what's called email infrastructure. You need to have the right infrastructure in place to be successful with cold email. So how does that work? So we're going to look at that. So email deliverability is tracked on a domain level. So that means if you're leveraging your primary domain, you're sending a bunch of cold emails, it's going to tank your deliverability and all of your emails will start landing in spam, which is the reason why a lot of people will say cold email is dead. So you can't send really from your primary domain. You can't be sending a bunch of emails and hiring a sales rep and say, hey, go ahead and send like 1,000 emails a day. You can't do that. This is why it doesn't work. So email deliverability is tracked on the domain level. It's not tracked on what's called a subdomain level or any other level, top level domain. So never run your cold emails from your primary domain. Then what you need to do really is you need to set up what's called these secondary domains to solve the problem of not sending from the primary domains. Secondary domains, let's say our domain name is salesforge.ai. That's our primary domain. We use that domain to do a lot of different things, but we don't use that domain to send cold emails. We don't use that domain for newsletters. So any large email motion, large email campaigns, etc., you need to decouple it from your primary domain. You need to create a infrastructure of secondary domains, try Salesforge, get Salesforge, team Salesforge, multitude of different domains. So you can go to a registrar like Cloudflare or like GoDaddy. GoDaddy is very typical. And use these registrars then to procure your domains. And then against those domains, set up mailboxes, essentially. And that's how you can have the necessary infrastructure then to engage with your prospects. Now, how many domains do you need? How many mailboxes you need? It really depends on the scale that you want to operate at. But essentially, the higher the scale that you want to be operating at, the more domains and the more mailboxes you really need. And typically, it's about 2 to 5 mailboxes per domain. That's all you can do. And each mailbox sends about 30 cold emails, roughly. And then there's an extra 20 warm-up emails. So we're going to discuss about warm-up in a bit. Warm-up essentially boosts your deliverability of your domains, so you also need to do warm-up. So that's why the total threshold is about 50 emails per mailbox per day, which is what we see in the previous email. So previous slide, sorry. So infrastructure is like a big thing as well. So you can't just be sending from primary domain. I recommend you to stop that because imagine if you're reaching out to your investors, if you're a startup, that will also land in spam. Or if you're reaching out to existing customers, that will also land in spam. And you're going to be in a position where all your emails land in spam. You don't want to be in that position. To recover the deliverability of the domain is a very painful process. So if you are serious about scale, already think about, infrastructure. Now, after you have got the infrastructure in place, you need to do what's called email warm-up. The email warm-up essentially is a concept where you're essentially circulating email in a network of, let's say, clients, domains, etc. We do that, for example, at our company. And you're sending emails out, you're getting replies back, and then if any emails land in spam, they get unspammed automatically. It's just a concept that allows you to boost the deliverability because these days when you send out a lot of cold emails, then you get barely any replies back. And then in the eyes of Gmail and Outlook, this looks like there's a bunch of automation happening. So to counter that automation perception of the metrics, you need to boost that with warm-up, where in warm-up pool, essentially you're getting a lot of replies, you're mimicking what real humans typically do, and this is why you need that warm-up to boost those domains. Because on day zero, especially on day zero, when you just buy a fresh domain, Gmail and Outlook have no idea whether these domains are going to be used for good purposes or bad purposes. So the bad stuff that's in the ecosystem is ransomware, malicious content. There's a lot of bad stuff that Gmail protects you from. And then the good stuff, that means you're a legit business user. So in order to be perceived as a legit business user, you need to do what's called email warm-up, which is a critical component of your email deliverability. It has to be done typically for 2 weeks when you buy a fresh domain before you engage with your prospects. Now, next thing that you need to do, which is 10 out of 10 priority, is when you're engaging with prospects at scale. Let's say you have a list of 1,000 prospects you want to be reaching out, and you got that list from some sort of database. Guess what? A lot of these people potentially don't work anymore at those companies because there's a typically very high staff turnover in a lot of companies. People leave jobs and all the time. So you need to do what's called list cleaning, and that essentially means verifying emails or validating emails. And because ultimately you will see that about 10% of these people don't work anymore. And the reason why you need to do that is because if you're going to have a very high what's called bounce rate as part of your email campaigns, Gmail and Outlook will see that. What's very high? It's over 2%. Over 2% bounce rate, you will have deliverability issues. So that's why you need to keep that bounce rate below 2% if you want to see good deliverability results. And then the final thing is what's called spin tags and AI. Good email copy is super important as part of your deliverability. Why that's the case? So essentially, this is where we're talking about templates. So most of the companies these days are like, I want to reach out to these 1,000 people, but I got to send them a template. Like, everybody will go get my template about my solution, etc. Now, when you're going to be starting sending out templates, then once, let's say, some of the prospects that will not like your messaging, they'll start clicking on the spam button. The Gmail and Outlook will realize that for that particular exact copy that's being circulated at scale, a lot of people are clicking on the spam button. So by default, what Gmail will start doing is going to start sending a lot of those emails into spam due to the copy. Sometimes you may go into your spam folder, it will say, this email landed in the spam due to content, because similar content has been reported as spam in the past. So to tackle that, there's only two ways to tackle that. One is what's called spin tags. Spin tags means you're saying the same thing using different words. Or, so essentially, for example, hey, hi, hello is an example of that, where you can spin the content and say the same thing. So at least 50% of that copy has to be spin tags. Or the second way to tackle the what's called static content problem is to use AI, where the AI crafts a unique email to every single individual. And that is possible today. Now, this is an example of what spin tags is. So here, I can't have a laser, but here you can see that it's spinning the content, for example, hey, aloha, hi. That's just an example of some random software that I found on the internet, how it's being spun. So spinning the content is like super important if you want to improve your deliverability metrics. Now, that's the basics. Now we're going to go into some golden nuggets, kind of quickly. Just what can you think about else, how to improve your deliverability, and how to really scale your cold email outreach. Next one is disabling open tracking. So a lot of people love to track stuff these days. Open tracking, click rate tracking, God knows whatever type of tracking. But the problem with tracking, especially in cold email, when you're tracking stuff and you're reaching out, specifically, let's say the enterprise-grade companies, governments, etc., a lot of them have very strict email security policy in place. And when they want to essentially filter out the unwanted emails, they want to anchor on something for those emails. And typically what they can anchor is on that tracking pixel, that invisible image that's in the email, and they can see that on their end. So when they see that on their end, then what they can do is they can decision that these emails should go directly to spam or a particular folder, quarantined, whatever, or they could just bounce. So essentially they can do something about it. So this is why if you actually are wanting to make sure that more of your emails actually land in the primary inbox of your potential customers, you actually want to be actually switching off the open rate tracking and just focus on the reply rates. Next one is what's called inbox rotation. So we talked about, a bunch of domains, bunch of mailbox to improve your deliverability. But it's not just about, using mailbox 1, front-loading, a lot of emails, using mailbox 2, front-loading a lot of emails to the max, and so on and so forth. No, you need to rotate the mailboxes. You need to, essentially, in the eyes of Gmail and Outlook, to make it look like you are actually a real human. So rotation is very important to improve your deliverability. So rotation concept, like rotating inboxes, is super important. So let's say, for example, we have 3 leads, and we have 3 mailboxes. So let's say for lead 1, we use mailbox 1. For lead 2, we're going to use mailbox 2. For lead 3, we're going to use mailbox 3. So rotating the mailboxes to improve your deliverability is a super important thing in deliverability. Next one is what's called ESP matching. Probably a lot of you wondering, what is ESP? ESP means email service provider, so that's Gmail and Outlook. And matching is like super important concept because essentially Gmail and Outlook don't like each other. So if you're sending from Gmail to an Outlook account, you have typically worse deliverability than sending, say, Gmail to Gmail, Outlook to Outlook. And the reason is simply because they don't like each other. So what I urge you to think about is when you are thinking about creating your own whether you could decide to go with Outlook or Gmail, think about what do your customers use? Do predominantly most of your customers use Outlook, or do they predominantly use Gmail? You can just ask them. Hey, do you use Gmail predominantly or do you use Outlook? Very simple, asking them in the call. And if most of them are going to tell you that they use Outlook, you should get Outlook if you want to make sure that you have fewer spam issues. That's what you want to do. Next is spam word checking. Some of you may work in what I call sensitive industry. You have some tricky words, or you want to test some words, and they're very sensitive. And what a lot of people do is they send emails, and then deliverability is really poor. But it's because of the words that they've chosen in the email that triggers spam alerts. So what you want to do is you want to sort of use like a copy checker, spam word checker, essentially called Mail Meteor, but is one example. Just go to Google spam checker, etc., and allows you to check your copy and see if you have some weird words in it. So typically the words get triggered like loans, something to do with, let's say, financial loans, or free stuff, or whatever, Nigerian princess and all that stuff. So you can kind of put your copy in there, and then they'll tell you whether there's some really issues, and you don't want to have the overall score being poor. You definitely want to make sure it's good score. Good score means better deliverability for you guys. So So maximum 3 emails in a sequence. So sequence means it's a campaign where you have multiple steps because you don't send one email to the prospect, you typically send about 3 emails, which I recommend is the max. Now, why 3 emails? Because typically 50% of total replies you'll get from the first email that you send. That means there's another 50% of the, there's extra 100% more of business in the couple follow-up emails that you would send. But don't send more than 3 emails to your prospects ever. First of all, like I mentioned, the probability of reply is just too low after the third email to justify sending. Just don't annoy your prospects. And secondly, the probability of getting a spam report is very high. The tipping point of the third email is just way, way too high. So don't send more than 3 emails. Actually, the smartest players or the smartest players, the more sophisticated players in the space, they only send 2 emails to the prospects. And then what you want to do essentially, especially if you have a smaller TAM, you want to be re-engaging with that prospect after a quarter. Because like I mentioned earlier, one of the biggest problems in outbound sales is the timing. So the person that responds after 2 emails, probably the timing is off. Or try another channel, try LinkedIn, give them a call, right? Send them a WhatsApp message, right? But don't not send more than 3 emails. Don't be that person. So 3 emails max. Next one, optimizing the preview text. Not the best image maybe, but essentially, if you look at your inbox, let's say my name is Frank, and you're typically gonna get, hey Frank, hi Frank, hey Frank, hi Frank, hey Frank, hi Frank, right? So it's typically the same stuff that you would see. And there's a preview, and actually there's subject lines, and in sales, it's all about pattern interrupt, right? So how do you make it look like it looks a bit odd, essentially? And a bit odd, so maybe don't start the sentence with, hey, Frank. Just start writing the sentence maybe. Just make it look that it's different to the typical email that you receive. Same thing, think about the same with subject lines. A lot of people like to capitalize letters in the subject line, and I keep telling every person, do not capitalize the letters because it looks odd if you don't. And because of that oddness, more people will open your emails, as simple as that. Same with the preview text. Think about how can you make it stand out. Next one, CTA, call to action. So, you write a copy. Typically, I recommend, we don't talk about copywriting here or how to write the best emails, whatever. But let's say, typically I say, try and validate the pain within the initial email, and then you have a call to action at the end. And a lot of people typically say, hey, how about 15 minutes next week, and we're going to discuss about this? How about the demo, etc.? But time is money. People don't have time to spend. You're potentially reaching out to very busy people. Your job is with cold emailing, is to start a conversation, not to book meetings. The meetings are the downstream conversion. That's going to happen later if you're able to validate the pain within the initial email. So you want to be asking questions like, is this a priority? Is this on your roadmap? Are you thinking about this? Like an open-ended question that allows you to start a conversation with your prospect rather than, how about 30 minutes? I'm like, dude, I might count this block, I need to think about it, whatever, right? So think about starting conversations, not jumping on meetings. By starting conversations, you will have more meetings. Think of it this way. So what are some of the soft CTA examples which are maybe slightly longer? So it's very important in just generally in cold emails to include numbers. So if you're saying, hey, I'm reaching out because of this, and I was just wondering whether you have this pain, what people really love to see in their emails is numbers. By how much you can improve something in their business within a period of time, right? And that triggers them, right? They look at these numbers, they, actually this is a big problem, whether that's, adding 200K more in revenue in 30 days, for example, right? And then if you're, let's say, a service business, if you can guarantee that you're going to do in this time frame, this is what's called an irresistible offer. You have to think about irresistible offers. So if you have a lot of competition, it's about offers. Irresistible offers is what moves the needle. Now, next gold nugget is the PS section. If you are specifically reaching out to folks in the US, right, you write the email, and you have this very beautiful CTA. By the way, don't do these links. These links are really bad for deliverability. Don't have a lot of links in the initial email. You can have a bunch of links in the follow-up emails. But essentially what you're seeing here, PS gives you that another opportunity essentially to sell yourself. You can sort of have something that's value-based essentially, some free value like a checklist on deliverability, etc. That's what we would do, for example, in the PS section. Then I said no links and images. Don't have them because any HTML, any links, that also harms your deliverability. But yes, in the follow-up. So videos, GIFs work wonders. And here's an example of one. Personalized GIFs. So use a company called Vidu.io, VIDU.io. Fantastic personalized GIFs that you can send, particularly after the demo, works wonders. Conversion rate goes through the roof for me. And then gold nugget number 10, maximum 50 words. Don't write super long emails because typically people, very important people write short, snappy emails to the point. So try and maximize to the max 50 words. No more than 50 words. Don't be this person. This also applies to LinkedIn. People write like whole paragraphs on LinkedIn. Crazy stuff. Think about LinkedIn like WhatsApp. And this is also the reason. You also need to also optimize your emails towards mobile, because essentially, most of the emails still these days are being read on the mobile device. So think about, just write short, snappy emails that actually can fit on the mobile screen. Just send it to yourself. Does it fit on your mobile screen or not? If it doesn't, really bad. And that's it. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you. Thank you, Frank. Awesome.